I'm Gabe Filippelli. I'm a professor of earth sciences and director of the Center for Urban Health at Indiana University. And I'd had an opportunity last year to go to Pakistan as part of a U.S. State Department mission to understand and communicate the sources of air pollution in that context. And I study air quality quite a bit here in the U.S. This pandemic has caused some substantial changes in human behavior, obviously, and one of them is the stay at home orders that are in place across the United States. These stay at home orders effectively keep people at their home with minimal transport. Most factories and manufacturing facilities are closed or extremely limited, and people's driving habits are very much different. For example, here in Indianapolis, we've seen a 90% reduction in vehicle traffic. Indianapolis is a city of about 1 million people, so it makes a big difference. So one of the biggest factors that they observed in China, in Wuhan, when they suffered the beginning stages of this terrible pandemic, is that industrialization and, of course, transport shut down completely. And as a consequence, the air was scrubbed in a sense. The air quality improved substantially. Now, we started our own shutdown the middle of March this year, so approximately 3 weeks ago. And what that shutdown here in the U.S., throughout the U.S., usually entails is the cessation of these kinds of activities. And a number of us researchers have been trying to examine two things. Is one, do you see an improvement in air quality from these shutdowns, and what are the likely sources? And two, then how might it factor into human health and people's own perception of their environment? So we've done some studies here in Indianapolis using air quality monitors, and we have a number of different monitors. One system for particulate matter, and other systems for the gases like nitrogen dioxide and ozone. The sources of these are different, right? There's some similarities. Particulate matter, this PM 2.5, can be emitted from the combustion of low quality fuels, for example, and burning of crops and all of those kinds of activities. Whereas the NO2 and ozone are more related to combustion alone. So it's the use of coal or gasoline or diesel or natural gas. When we've examined this in Indianapolis, we did a comparison of the last 3 weeks, I'm sorry, this year versus the last 3 weeks last year. The problem with air quality as a metric is it varies over time because of factors of human emissions, right? But also because of atmospheric conditions. So we needed to make sure we had a long enough time window to be able to clearly see what signal we might see. And in fact, what we saw in Indianapolis is a 38% reduction in one of these emission gases, NO2, from 2018 to 2019. So a substantial reduction in this, what they call a criteria air pollutant. NO2 causes breathing issues, including asthma, and is particularly problematic for people with a pulmonary disease and an advanced pulmonary disease. This 38% drop is of substantial enough value and was for a long enough time period to indicate that it really was human activity. It wasn't just weather. This was clearly the human footprint of reduced emissions. Now, in Indianapolis, the reduced emissions are probably largely because of transport-related reductions, so less vehicles on the road. And we saw that correlated quite well to a drop in road traffic measured by our Department of Transportation. So this link, I think what's interesting and informative about this is that it's a small distance between our human activities here locally and net improvement on the environment locally. So when you think of something like climate change, you think, well, this is a global issue. How are we going to deal with this as a global problem? You can't, the link isn't always as tight. With air quality, it's extremely tight. And we've been able to document that Stay-at-home orders cause within 1 week an absolute cleaning out of the air. And I think you're seeing it there in Pakistan and in India and other places in Southeast Asia where the air is clearer than people have ever seen. Okay, so what's the ramifications of that in the global context? Obviously, it's tragic that it takes a pandemic to see that link, but sometimes major shocks to systems can result in greater awareness and education. When we weather through this pandemic, I think that we need to remember a couple lessons. One of them is that we have a direct link to our own local environment. Our actions can improve local health. And this is with this COVID virus, this is particularly telling, I think, because if you recall from other studies, we know that areas that have substantially poorer air quality over like year time frame, the outcomes for patients, the severe illness of patients is much, much worse than areas with cleaner air. So this is a really critical point, I think. So not only do we see that immediate improvement, but if we can sustain this, if we can fully understand how important it is to clean up our air and to improve on issues like with carbon emissions for climate change, global climate change, we could substantially improve our local and global environment while also improving health. So I hope that this has been informative, and I'm sorry I can't join you in person. It's our holiday evening, and it would be about midnight for me. So I am happy to answer any questions you might have offline. gfilippe@iu.edu. Have a very safe month.